Something happened to me a while back, and ever since then I just can't bring myself to sleep on a regular bed. It was a traumatizing and emotionally scarring event. The kind you know that you'll never forget. But before I get into it, I have to talk about space. I don't mean the space up there, stars and galaxies and whatnot. I mean actual physical space. More specifically, the space in your own home. If you're like me and have lived most of your life for a good enough number of years in the exact same house, you might know what I'm talking about. For example, as a kid, I used to go around my house and attempt doing all sorts of things with my eyes closed. Making toast, turning the TV on and finding my favorite channels, starting up my PlayStation, dressing and undressing. I think you get the idea. Every now and then, even as an adult, I would try to do the same things as well. And I'm sure that some of you can relate to what I'm saying here. What I'm trying to say is that if you live long enough in a certain place, you're bound to get this nearly perfect notion of where your things are and how much space they're taking, just as you know where you have free space. It's the kind of thing that you just know. I was attending university at the time, and I was living in the same apartment I had lived my whole life up until that point. My parents, who had retired by then, were kind enough to let me keep it, and they decided to move up to their holiday house in Vermont. I lived alone, and I seldom had people over, and I never had any maid of any kind come in to do some chores. I'm the only one who ever really interacted with the place, so I definitely knew perfectly well every little thing about it, where I kept all my stuff and whatnot. On the night everything went wrong, I remember sensing that something was off as soon as I opened the door to my home. I caught a whiff of something strange in the air, which dissipated almost instantly. I knew what the interior of my own home usually smelled like, but that strange odor was something that I simply couldn't place or identify. Maybe a gust of wind had carried the scent of something the neighbors from next door were cooking, perhaps. I chalked it off to being something along those lines, but that wasn't the end of it. I was pretty much restless for the rest of the evening. I just felt so weird and uneasy. All the more so for not knowing why I was feeling like that. Subconsciously, I could tell that something was wrong, but the realization would only come at a later time. I couldn't shake off the notion that I wasn't feeling safe, not at all in my own home on that particular night, which is something that had never happened to me before. I ended up doing something that I also used to do all the time when I was a kid when I was left alone for long periods of time. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, and I went from room to room to make sure that there weren't any uninvited guests to be found. Obviously, there's no way that my younger self would have ever been able to do anything if he were to actually come face to face with an intruder. Deep down, I allowed myself to grab a knife and play brave because I kinda knew it was mostly my imagination, and that there weren't any monsters or robbers waiting for me in the dark. But as an adult, the reality of being assaulted in your own home is on a whole nother level. You no longer have your childlike imagination to blame your fears. You live in the real world where bad things happen all the time, which includes people somehow managing to break into your home for who knows what purpose. You can never be too careful, and fear helps you keep everything in check. And so, just like the good old times, I grabbed a knife which gave me the illusion of being safer, braver and stronger than I am in reality, and I checked all the rooms in my apartment. To no one's surprise, I found absolutely nothing, but then again, I wasn't exactly expecting to find anything out of the ordinary, I guess. I managed to relax for the rest of the evening, and eventually I went to bed. But I didn't fall asleep right away like I used to. Something was keeping me awake, but I still didn't know what it was. As I was lying in bed, I found myself rattled by the very absence of sound in my home. This wouldn't have been an issue at all on any other day, but this time it was different. No, something was different. Something about my apartment had changed while I was out. I was sure of it, and yet this was the kind of certainty that I just couldn't explain. I knew it, but I didn't know why or how I knew it. I couldn't think of anything else as I tried to figure it out, but nothing made sense to me. I mean, I had gone around the house armed with a knife, as I looked for intruders of any kind, but I didn't come across anything suspicious. And that's when it hit me. A realization so sudden and terrifying that I could almost feel its crushing weight pressing down on me. Yes, I had walked around my home and checked all the rooms, but I hadn't quite checked every single nook and cranny. I had missed one specific, obvious spot. Well, it's not so much that I missed it, but it's one of those things that you tend to think about a lot more as a kid. As an adult, you just tend to worry about more realistic things, such as windows and doors being properly locked. What I'm trying to say is that I had pretty much verified that my whole place was safe, except for the space under my bed. As soon as I realized this, I started thinking about space all over again. More specifically, the space under my bed. The space between the floor and the mattress. I started thinking about all that space, and how someone could easily fit in there. Right under me. And that was it. As soon as I thought about it, I knew that's what it was. I knew what was wrong. There was, without a doubt, someone under my bed. As soon as this thought turned into a cold hard fact in my mind, that's when I first noticed it. A sound so faint, a sound so nearly not there that it might have not been there at all. This wheezing of sorts, the sound of something breathing in and out, but trying to keep it as silent as possible. I could barely hear it, thanks to how hard and fast my heart was beating, but I knew that it was there. Just as my body knew all along, from the moment it stepped inside the apartment, that something was different. Whether it was something or someone, it was undeniable. A certain amount of mass had somehow found its way in, and it was now occupying an undetermined amount of space under my bed. Under me. I was barely able to process all of this as I tried to keep my cool, while trying not to alert whoever was under me that they had been found out. But it was easier said than done. I was sweating buckets and lightly shaking under the covers, and if anything, I thought it was only a matter of time until the sound and vibration of my own heartbeat gave me away. And then everything stopped, as my mind drew a blank and my heart skipped a beat, when I felt something slightly poking the mattress right under me. I would have gasped if I could, but I swear it felt like my heart had actually lodged itself inside of my throat. I was petrified. Was it a finger? Was it a knife? Was I going to get stabbed at any given second without notice? Was something actually going to just pierce straight through me? Would it get my lung, my liver, my heart, my spine? I was on the verge of losing my mind, and when I started sensing multiple of these unseen fingers pushing against the mattress and softly drawing circles and lines on it, that's when I knew that something was definitely very wrong. I felt like I couldn't just get up and leave, because any sudden movement like me rapidly jumping out of bed might tip them off in some way. So instead, I pretended to shuffle under the covers as if I had been rolling in my sleep, and I grabbed my phone from my nightstand which was fortunately on silent mode. I scheduled an alarm to ring 30 seconds later, to try and pass it off as a call. I would get up, pretend to answer my phone, and use that as an excuse to get the hell out of my apartment. I put my phone back without making a sound, and I waited. As soon as it rang, I grabbed it as I literally leapt from my bed towards my bedroom door. "Oh, hey man, what's up?" I said, pretending to answer my phone. When I reached the door, I switched the lights on almost instinctively, and what I saw made me drop my phone. There was an arm rapidly reaching out from under my bed, but this was no regular arm. It was extremely thin with barely any skin plastered over its bones. It was also very long and disjointed. Very disjointed. An arm with 7 elbows comes to mind, but its strange shape kinda made it look more like an arm that had been broken in 7 different places. I only saw it for a split second or so, but it was more than enough. And I'll never forget how it just seemed to unfurl from under the bed, as it bent itself in so many different and strange ways, as whatever it was attached to was crawling out from under there. I ran out of the apartment, slamming the door shut behind me just as something crashed into it. Needless to say, I didn't wait for the elevator. I just went straight for the stairs and jumped so many flights that I feared I would break my ankles at some point. I was so out of it that by the time I had reached the ground floor, I just kept on running, which resulted in me going through a pretty solid pane of glass, which made up most of the main entrance door that leads into the building. When I came to, I had paramedics all over me, as well as nosy neighbors trying to figure out what my deal was. I only noticed the cops a little while afterwards, as they waited for the medics to clear me so they could ask me what the hell had happened. I can't quite remember what I said or how I said it, but I think they probably got the gist of it since they quickly went up to my apartment with the landlord leading the way. They came back down about 10 minutes later, and they said that they hadn't found anything. They then proceeded to lock the place down to conduct a more careful sweep of the building, including checking in with every other resident on every other floor. But they still came up empty some hours later. I didn't really understand how that could be the case, but if I had really seen what I think I saw, I had to accept that I could have just hoped for a logical explanation. The cops and paramedics eventually left, having determined that I was okay enough and that my lacerations weren't that big of a deal. But I never went back up. I never entered that apartment ever again. On that night, I stayed over at a friend's place, and some days later, he and another buddy of mine helped me move all my things out of the apartment that I had lived in all my life up until then. When I say that they helped me, I'm saying they did pretty much all the heavy lifting considering I wasn't even there. I just couldn't bring myself to ever come near that place again. They were cool about it, but I could tell that they resented me a little bit for it, considering that they lost an enormous amount of time with the entire ordeal. As I said, I never went back there. Never once did I step another foot into my apartment after I ran away from whatever that thing was. And that's why I no longer sleep on a bed. That's why I no longer sleep on a mattress. I just tend to sleep on the floor, most of the time because the trauma was that bad. But that's not all. If you think that I could easily just get myself one of those low beds, the kind where someone couldn't possibly fit under, or if you think for a moment that you're safe in your own room, just because nothing could possibly fit underneath your bed, well, allow me to tell you just how wrong you are. It doesn't matter the kind of bed that I use. It doesn't matter the kind of bed that you use. No matter how you sleep, or what you sleep on, there will always be space. You understand? Whether it's the space between the floor and your bed, the space that separates the mattress and your body, the space between the fabric of your t-shirt and your very skin, there will always be some space. There will always be room for that thing to find its way in. I should know, because no matter where I sleep or what I sleep on, I always wake up with the sensation of fingers running across my back.